This I also like, just from a rhetorical standpoint. Part of I think the response that you're talking about in terms of the press and the way that they're addressing her economic proposals, and we should say from what we know, at least in the speeches, and we'll be playing this David Dayen interview tomorrow, and he said that during her speeches she's still bringing up the 5% rent control, national
rent increase
cap.
Right. That's good.
Here is Harris answering questions to the press, and this is a marked change. I know this is going to seem sort of subtle to people, but this is a marked change from where we were 10, 15 years ago, when the best way to get a Democrat to stop talking about policies that would support people would be to pretend like there was some type of deficit hawkery and that they needed to justify these things. Which was all just garbage. It was all BS anyways. But here is Harris with a decidedly different rhetorical approach to this age-old question that we get from the Beltway press.
Economic policies last week.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you're going to pay for those? And can you give us a sense of what other policies you want to unveil going forward?
Sure. Well, I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. That is, it's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it in the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. When we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment. When you are strengthening neighborhoods, strengthening communities, and in particular the economy of those communities, and investing in a broad-based economy, everybody benefits, and it pays for itself in that way.
Well,
that's awesome.
From, the austerity politics
and the media and everyone understands this when it's time to forgive, say, the funds given to businesses during the COVID pandemic. It's like, oh yeah, they didn't pay that back because it's just something we wanted to do.
Or we're going to give $20 billion to Israel to fight a war. Right. Where was the one question there? Of how are we going to pay for that?
Yeah.
Where are the where are the cuts associated with that? Where, it's the question is deployed very strategically by the right in this country. And, finally, honestly, it's the first time I've ever seen a candidate running for certainly for national office, a Democrat running for national office, but even,
in the general. Yeah.
In a general election. I mean, Bernie Sanders would answer this way. But to see Harris basically say, I'm not going to take the bait. We're investing in a better society. That's the payoff. I mean, that's how we pay for it.
Yeah.
That's good.
Bonk.
Fart Wayne, we reduced child poverty by 40% and then we brought it right back, baby. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe Manchin.
We did.
Would be an interesting dynamic. Would you rather have a 51 or 52 seat majority with Sinema and Manchin, or a 50 seat majority with none of those, with maybe Tester being the most conservative for Harris?
It sort of depends on there was back in the days where Joe Lieberman was around and Evan Bayh. I mean, there was literally half a dozen, maybe a dozen of these guys.
Obama had 60 for a little bit.
Yes,
he had 60 for. It was a shorter period of time than people think. It was closer to 14 months maybe, because Franken didn't get seated until around this time after the election. Maybe it was July and then Kennedy died on the other end. So it was not even a full 2 years. But that being said, there was the idea was that, like, regardless of where you put the filibuster, like they reduced the filibuster, from 66 to 60, I think, during that era. Regardless of where you put the filibuster, a guy like Lieberman is going to put himself as the 59th or 60th vote. Mm-hmm. They're always going to move there so that they get that sort of like, and that's what Manchin has done, right? I mean, it took him a while to figure out how he would get there. And Sinema did it because she had the cover of Manchin. It's hard to know who has that disposition until they have the opportunity to be that person. It could be Fetterman. It could, I mean, we could see Fetterman doing that kind of thing.
Yes. Although the child tax, like the fact that the even J.D. Vance is disingenuously saying he'll do $5,000. That's interesting, right? I mean, look, then partisanship, if she gets elected, it's all out the window, but maybe just means there's something a little bit different. Not saying you bring Republicans on board, but maybe it means something a little different for frontline Democrats.
4 years, coming from Connecticut, supported a 55-year-old or a Medicare buy-in, or dropping it to 55. I can't remember what it was. And it makes sense if you're supporting the interests of the health insurance industry, right? Because if we can offload, as the insurance company, offload people aged 55 to 65 onto the government, onto Medicare, our risk pool now has improved. So we could charge the same amount of money. Our risk pool is better, and we still have a cohort of people who are the least likely to, or less likely to, need medical care, and we make more money. And Lieberman was for this. And then when it came up in the negotiations of the ACA, he turned against it just because he wanted to be the guy that everybody had to come to. I mean, he was that, like, I remember at the time thinking, like, how is it possible that someone's just completely insane ego and feelings of, like, so mad that he was rejected by Democratic primary voters in Connecticut, is going to, like, carry the day and change the outcomes for tens of millions of people. I mean, it was just fascinating to watch. It was gross, but it was fascinating. Let's do this. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.